Could it be? But me, your man, Louie T, welcome to the continued coverage of the 2018 NFL Scouting Combine. Day number one was yesterday, and I got a chance to watch day one in its entirety, and I walked away maybe as impressed as I've ever been with one particular player. I'll let you take one guess as to who that player was. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy go through the combine, make everything look as easy and effortless as one Saquon Barkley did yesterday. I was just blown away. And the bad part was I expected him to do everything that he did. It's one thing in your mind to expect something. It's another to actually see it manifest itself out on the field. And again, this is the underwear Olympics. You take it with a grain of salt. But we saw this man do this at Penn State, okay? It's not like this is something that is a revelation and something that just came out of nowhere. We expected him to do this because he did it on the football field with pads against other guys that were trying to stop him. So to see what he did yesterday might be the single most impressive combine performance I've ever seen out of any individual player at his size, to run how fast he did, to jump as high as he did, and we knew he was going to do those things. To see his bench reps, to see him catch the football, the fluidity with which he moved, just the nonchalance with the way he caught the football. He caught the football better than any receiver I saw today. That includes Calvin Ridley, who I'll talk about on the day two wrap up here after I break this one down. But let's talk about day one. Let's start with group one, the offensive line and the big nasties, guys up in the trenches. Let's start with the first group. And the guys that I thought stood out with this group, Austin Corbett from Nevada, big guy. They liken him to a guy that came out of Nevada a couple of years ago in Joel Bitonio. I see a lot of that in him. Again, what the combine does for me, especially with offensive linemen who I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of tape on, is it gives me a framework and a reference point. So now I know I need to watch a little bit of Austin Corbett just to be a little bit more familiar with him. I already knew about Desmond Harrison. There's been a lot of buzz about him this draft season, about this kid. Now, there's a lot of baggage here. 3 high schools, 3 colleges in his short career. This is a guy that went to Texas, got kicked out of the program, and ended up at the University of Western Georgia. So here's a guy that is a little lean, but we knew that coming into the combine, but extremely athletic and long. And you saw that with his 40 time, 4.9 flat. 40 at around 295 pounds. He's going to have to get bigger, obviously, but the athleticism is definitely there. So is the length. He's very intriguing as a guy that you want to look to draft and develop. Will Hernandez, I think, stole the show from an offensive lineman standpoint. I actually thought he was better than both of the Notre Dame guys. And again, I'm not telling you to draft Will Hernandez before you draft Quentin Nelson. That's not what I'm telling you to do, okay? But I actually thought he helped himself. Let me frame it that way. He helped himself more than anybody else along the offensive line, along with another guy that I'm going to talk about when we get to the second group. But Will Hernandez, remember, keep in mind, you're talking about a damn near 340-pound offensive lineman running a 5.15 40. And again, I don't want to harp on 40 times for offensive linemen too much. I don't want to put too much stock into that. But again, it just gives you a little bit of guidance as to just how good these guys move for how big they are. And Will Hernandez, I was just impressed with his movement skills all day long. The guy that I thought also showed well, he didn't run, was James Daniels out of Iowa. They've got a number of guys that look to get drafted. Sean Welsh is another guy that's looking to get drafted out of Iowa. And, you know, that's a factory. When we talk about offensive line, we love talking Big Ten because you know these guys are going to be coached up, technically sound. They're going to be tough, physical. road graders in the run game. You talk about anybody from Wisconsin. You talk about some of these guys from Ohio State. You're talking about some of the better offensive linemen, Michigan State. All these guys usually come in and they're nasty. But Iowa, to me, takes the cake. They're at the top of the list when you're talking NFL prospects and the technical side of things. They get great coaching from the Ferentz family up there at Iowa. And I think James Daniels, another guy that a lot of people like as a center, can also play guard, is another guy that I thought looked good in the movement drills on the field in Group 1, even though he did not run the 40. He said there was a little bit of tightness in his hamstring. No one is looking to get hurt out there, so if you feel a little tightness or a twinge, no need to run the 40. That's what your pro day is for. The guy that disappointed the most of all the groups in day one was Orlando Brown. And again, he's one of those guys that you knew he wasn't going to test that well just looking at his size and his build. He's got a sloppy build, very, very soft body. But you're talking about a guy that's like 6'7", 6'8", similar to his dad, if you remember Zeus, big Orlando Brown, that played for the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. He was the one that got hit in the eye with the flag by the referee and sued the NFL. Nonetheless, this is his son. And you're talking about a guy at Oklahoma that was a huge tree. I mean, literally, arms are ridiculously long. You're talking about a 6'7", 6'8" frame. Just hard to get around. Again, not the best movement skills in the world. Doesn't move laterally very well. Not going to be a fast guy. Not going to be very quick either. But if he gets his hands on you, usually he's going to win. And a little disappointed. Again, 5'7" in the 40. Mike Mayock went through an exercise where he talked about a lineman that ran that slow, and he basically said that there's been no success in the league with guys that have run that slow at the combine. So that's not a good thing, but again, doesn't mean he can't buck that trend. But the 14 reps of 2 1/4, that probably was more concerning than anything that he did athletically on the field. Now, again, when you're longer, it's tougher to get those reps up. The guys with shorter arms are the ones that's pumping it up 30, 35 times, like a Will Hernandez, who I think had over 35 reps in his bench press. He's a shorter guy, shorter arms, easier for him to get the bar up and down, up and down, up and down. I'm a guy with a little bit longer arms for my size, so I understand the struggle with trying to get the bar up multiple times. But again, at that size, I need you to be a lot stronger, functionally stronger than 14 reps. You've got wide receivers outshining you on the bench. Again, those guys don't have as long as arms as you do, but still, there's no excuse for receivers and some running backs to be doubling you in the bench when you're a 350, 60, even 70-pound offensive lineman. No excuse for that. I thought Orlando Brown's day was rough. Really, his week, if you go to the bench press and the field drills, was a rough couple of days for him. But I think some team's going to overlook all of that, and he's still going to get drafted. And I think he's still going to get drafted relatively high because you can't teach the length and the size that this guy has. And I think some offensive line coach wants to get their hands on him and try to mold him into the type of player that they want him to be. But that was Group 1 along the offensive line. As you go to the Group 2 of the O-linemen, this group was a lot more decorated, a lot more athletic, and I think you're going to get some good football players out of this particular group. This group featured the big boys out of Notre Dame, McGlinchey and Nelson. Neither one of them ran the 40. Both of those guys also complained about little twinges in the hammy. Again, no one's looking to get hurt out there. If you can't go on the 40, you can always do that at your pro day. So they bypassed that but did everything on the field. I thought they were good. I didn't think they were great. They didn't blow me away. This didn't remind me of that draft where we had all of those guys, Matthews, and we had the athlete out of Michigan that got drafted by Tennessee in the first round. His name escapes me at this moment, but that was the draft for me where there were so many athletic offensive linemen. There were so many good remember, we had about 4 O-linemen, offensive tackles, go off the board in like the first 10 picks in that particular draft. To me, that's the gold standard if you're talking offensive tackles, offensive line drafts. Last year was a down year along the offensive line. This year could be a down year along the offensive line. But Nelson is going to go possibly top 5, definitely top 10. And you may sneak another tackle in there, maybe a McGlinchey, maybe a Connor Williams, who I thought was a really good guy in day number 1. Along with some other guys that I was really impressed with. Colton Miller, I knew a little bit about him just off of Josh Rosen tape. So I knew a little bit about Colton Miller going into it. I did not expect him to run a 4.95. I knew he was a good athlete. I knew he was long and he could move. I didn't expect him to run a sub-5. And so that was impressive. And I thought he moved really well throughout the day. Same can be said for Brian O'Neill, a pit tackle that, man, oh man, 4'8", 240. He was flying, ex-basketball player. So he's got the movement skills. Little lean, obviously, but he's a guy that now I got to go back and I've got to watch him because I had no idea who he was prior to the combine. And with those kind of times and the way that I watched him move out on the football field, I am very curious to see what his tape looks like after seeing that kind of athleticism. Braden Smith won the Hercules Award for me in day 1 with this second group of offensive linemen. He is chiseled. I mean, remember how last year we were going goo goo gaga over Tano Passigno and how he was just rock solid, chiseled, looked like he didn't have an ounce of body fat on him. It's rare to see an offensive lineman look the same way, but Braden Smith made 310 pounds look as chiseled and rock solid as you could possibly make it look. He's well put together, and he's actually a really good athlete, and he moved well out of Auburn, and he's a guy that I also knew about previous to the combine, and I thought he looked good and helped himself as well. Connor Williams, to me, in this group, along with Rod Taylor, was a guy that I had no idea who he was, a guard out of Ole Miss. I thought Rod Taylor looked good, and he actually looked good, had on the purple gloves, purple cleats to match. I thought he went out, he moved well. I got to watch him now because I thought he was a guy that if you weren't very familiar with him, he's going to force you to have to go back and do some homework on him because of how well he performed in some of these field drills. But Connor Williams, for me in the second group, was the star of the show. I know Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey got all the publicity and all of the headlines, and they were the guys that they were kind of giving the star treatment to. But for me, Connor Williams, 5'05", 40. I thought he moved extremely well. I thought he looked fluid in his movements. They had the drill where they've got them basically backing up. They've got them shuffling their feet down the line, and the coach is giving them the sign with the football to go side to side. And it's almost like if you've ever played any kind of sports doing the karaoke drill, similar to that, except you don't cross your feet. And I thought Connor Williams killed it. And it just shows the change of direction, that redirect. You need that as an offensive lineman, especially in this day and age with all of these athletically gifted defensive linemen and linebackers and how they're getting smaller and faster. And you got to be able to get out there. And those guys, they're like jitterbugs when you're going out in space. They move quickly and they dart from one direction to another. You've got to be able to jump in front of these guys and block them. Connor Williams looks like he has everything you need to be a big-time offensive tackle at the next level. Again, another one of these guys, though, a little light. Going to have to get a little bit stronger functionally, but I like what I saw out of Connor Williams. Billy Price, really tough break for him. Tears his pectoral muscle while doing the bench. And so he was not able to perform here, but not only that, he's going to have to require surgery to heal that. Don't know the timetable for his return. And again, this is the worst time possible to have that kind of injury because now it could affect his draft stock. Guys or teams aren't going to be able to work him out and see what he's capable of. I think a lot of people know what kind of a football player Billy Price is, but you want to see it for yourself. You want to see the movement skills. You want to talk to him, and you still can talk to him, but not going to be able to see him work out. That's a tough break for Billy Price. You hate to hear anybody getting injured at the combine. And then the 49ers also won the coin toss between the Raiders and the 49ers. Both Bay Area teams had to flip the coin. They were tied for 9th. Winner got 9th. The loser was going to drop to 10th in the draft to round out the top 10. And the 49ers won the coin flip. And so they're the 9th pick in the draft. The Raiders fall back to the 10th overall selection. As we move on to Group 3, the running backs, as we're still in day 1. And I was just absolutely blown away. This was a really good group of running backs, I must say. The depth at the running back position is very intriguing. We knew that going into the combine, though. I'm not telling you anything that you didn't already know. We knew this was a deep group. I think this is a more talented group than I thought going into it, and I think it's a more talented group than we saw last year. And remember, last year's group of running backs had a major impact on the league, whether you're talking Tariq Cohen or you're talking about the guys at the top. Obviously were huge home run hitters and impactors. Of course, Leonard Fournette comes to mind, Christian McCaffrey, Kareem Hunt led the league in rushing. So you had a number of guys that stood out. Obviously, Alvin Kamara won Rookie of the Year. So a number of rookie runners really impacted the NFL and their teams in a positive way last year. And I think this group has the makings of a group that could do the same thing and maybe even exceed what we saw from the running back position last year. Just looking at the list, and these are some bigger backs, and these guys are really athletic, which gives you a reason to be really excited about teams that are looking for a running back but don't want to spend a first and maybe don't even want to spend a second. There's still going to be quality depth in the middle rounds, third, fourth, and possibly even upwards of the fifth round. You probably can still get your hands on a Bo Scarborough. I don't know if that's your type of back, but he still ran a 4.52 at 225. He's a big guy, 40-inch vert, so you see the explosiveness. Yeah, he's a build-up runner. He's a build-up speed guy, but there's a lot of talent. So let's go through this group because I was really impressed with the running back group. Obviously, Saquon Barkley, I'll save the best for last. I don't want to gush over him and kind of omit the guys around him because he was so good. He made everybody else look so ordinary. Let's start with Nick Chubb because I was down on Nick Chubb. If anybody watched the college football playoffs, which if you didn't, shame on you. The college football playoffs was some of the best, most captivating football I've seen in quite some time. The Rose Bowl between Georgia and Oklahoma, ridiculous. The national championship game, especially the ending, was just out of this world. And in both of those games, Sony Michel was the star of those two. And really, for the life of their careers, it's been Nick Chubb, Nick Chubb, Nick Chubb. Well, Sony Michel, he took over, and he was the guy. And when you watched him against Oklahoma, Sony Michel was the guy. When you watched him in the national championship game, Nick Chubb looked like a scrub. So I kind of was down on Nick Chubb, and a lot of people had been banging the table for Nick Chubb. And I've got to go back and I've got to watch more Nick Chubb because he ran faster than Sony Michel. And again, I think when you put the pads on and you put these guys in between the white lines, Sony Michel is still faster than Nick Chubb. I will go to lengths with anybody, and I will argue until my face turns blue that Sony Michel is still faster than him. But in the 40, Nick Chubb ran a 4.52. I promise you, I did not see that coming. I had Nick Chubb in that 4.57 to 4.6 range, and it wouldn't have shocked me if he ran a 4.62. And to see him come out and blaze a 4.52 blew me away, changes my whole thought process on what this guy's capable of. 29 reps of 2.25 tied him for the most with Saquon Barkley at the running back position. And again, keep in mind, Orlando Brown, a 6'8", 360-pound tackle, had 14 reps. These guys doubled him. Ridiculous. But he's a big physical back. We knew that about Chubb. But the 38.5-inch vert to go along with the 4.52 blew me away. I was impressed with him catching the football as well. Didn't see that coming from Nick Chubb. I walked away extremely impressed with Nick Chubb and what he was able to do at the combine in day number one. Darius Geis is a guy that a lot of people think is the second back behind Saquon Barkley in this draft. A lot of people have first-round grades on him, including myself. Ran a 4.49, which is a great time for him at that size, at basically 5'10", 224. You're talking about a big back, a guy that likens himself to Marshawn Lynch, says that's his favorite running back and idolizes him. You know he's going to run the football a little bit more physically, and he did that in 2017. Didn't hit as many home runs as he did in 2016. Showed off a little bit more of an ability to run between the tackles and be a little bit more physical and get the 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But the 4.49 still speaks to his ability to hit the home run when the opportunity presents itself. So I think Darius Geis helped himself. I don't think he's as natural a pass catcher as, say, a Saquon Barkley. No one is as natural a pass catcher as Saquon Barkley and some of these other guys like Nyheim Hines, who is a gadgety guy. We'll talk about him here in a second. There's some other guys that can catch it really naturally. Sony Michel, I thought he had a little bit of trouble catching the football at times. He caught it well at times, and then he didn't. So the jury's still out on him. But nonetheless, I think Geis is a guy that he checked off boxes. I don't think he did anything to help himself necessarily. The 40 time was key because that helped check a box, but I don't think he blew anybody away with what he did at the combine. Kalen Ballage was a guy that a lot of people liked. He's a guy out of Arizona State, 6'1", 228, huge frame, big height, weight, speed guy, 4'4", 640. Everyone knew he was going to run fast, so he wasn't a surprise. The inconsistencies scare people with him, but again, he get in the right system with that kind of speed, the ability to catch it out of the backfield and run as fast as he can with that size. I think he's a very intriguing prospect in the mid rounds of this draft. Nyheim Hines, as I spoke about earlier, he's one of those guys at 5'8", 198. I look at him as more of a Tariq Cohen type of guy, not a guy that you're looking to get the football to on a down-in, down-out basis, but you find and create ways, which is what they did with him at NC State. You find and create ways to get him the football out in space. Or I like the term Mike Mayock came up with for some of these receivers. I liken Nyheim Hines to some of those guys, space guys. Guys you want to get out in space. And that's a term I'm going to adopt and I'm going to start to use for guys like Nyheim Hines, that he's not really a real running back to me. Just a guy you get out in space, similar to Tavon Austin. Really doesn't have a true position. Just want to get these guys out in space. They can return punts, kickoffs, jet sweeps, hitches and wide receiver screens, things where you just get them the football immediately, get some blockers out in front, get them out in space, hence the name Space Guys. But he ran a 4.3 840, showing that speed off, and again, catches the ball really well out of the backfield. So I think he's the guy that you move around in space, hence the name Space Guys. I think you can move him around, put him in the slot, put him out wide, start him out in the backfield, get a mismatch against a linebacker. And for the life of me, I don't understand why the NFL, they look at a guy and they say, okay, well, he's in the backfield, so he's a running back. We're going to treat him like a running back. And now you got a linebacker against a guy that's running a 4.38, a huge mismatch. I think you can take advantage of that with a guy like Nyheim Hines. Justin Jackson is a guy that was hugely productive at Northwestern. Over 1,000 yards the last 3 seasons, 4.5, 240. He ran a lot faster than I thought. When I watched him, and I watched a ton of Northwestern, don't ask me why, but I watched a ton of Northwestern on Saturdays. I never once said to myself, Justin Jackson, 4.5 guy. I looked at Justin Jackson and I said, high 4.5s, low 4.6s. And for him, and again, much like Nick Chubb, for him to come out and run a 4.52, both of those guys ran 4.52s. I don't know if Justin Jackson plays to that speed or not. I've seen Nick Chubb look like a 4.52 back before, but I didn't expect that out of him. I don't think I've ever seen Justin Jackson run a 4.52 on tape. So, or not even on tape, just watching him live. So that one was a real surprise to me at 5'11", 199. Not the biggest guy in the world, but again, very productive at Northwestern. Ronald Jones II, I was really looking forward to watching this guy catch it because that was going to be his calling card. A lot of people said that he could be the second back in the draft. If he went out and balled at the combine and he, after the first run of the 40, he strained his hamstring, and we saw it happen midway through that first 40. You could see him kind of pull up, and you knew the deal, and we didn't see him the rest of the day, and so that was a little disappointing. Hopefully he's okay for the SC Pro Day, but really disappointed that I didn't get to see Ronald Jones II perform at the combine. I was really looking forward to seeing what he was capable of doing. Sony Michel is a guy that I was really intrigued by. 5'11", 214, which is right around the size we expected from him. This is a guy that at 4'5", 440, I thought he would run faster. I'm not going to lie. I thought he was going to be a 4.47, 4.49 guy, somewhere in there. Nothing less than a 4.51, 4.52, and he ran a 4.54. Again, we're really apples to, you know, I mean, literally, we're apples to apples here. I mean, we're splitting hairs. 4.51, 4.54. I think he's faster than that. I think he's a 4.49, 4.48 guy, a sub 4.5 guy when you put the pads on. I watched him outrun angles. Again, you can't tell me the guy that you watched in the national championship game, the guy that you watched torch Oklahoma, despite the fumble in that game, you can't tell me that that guy's running a not running a sub 4.5. I'm just not buying that. But I thought he caught the football okay. I didn't think he blew me away with his pass catching ability. That's something he's going to have to work on because a lot of people want to liken him to Alvin Kamara from last year. And if you're going to do that, the thing that I told everybody about, and Alvin Kamara ran the same exact time last year, 4.54, and everybody was talking about Kamara, and I said, Kamara's faster, first of all. Same thing I'm saying about Sony Michel. He's faster when he puts the pads on. That's number one. Number two, Alvin Kamara could catch the football. We knew that going into the draft, and we knew that going into the combine, and we knew that going into the season. This guy can catch the football. I'm not so sure about Sony Michel. They didn't throw it to him enough in Georgia, so that's something we got to see. But Rashad Penny is a guy that a lot of people have been mentioning as a sleeper back in the mid-rounds, and I see why. 4.46 at 220 pounds. I thought he moved well. I thought he caught the football well, too. And so there's value here in Rashad Penny out of San Diego State, and he's another one of those guys that I think mid-round sleeper like a Kareem Hunt last year, a mid-round sleeper from a smaller school, kind of off the grid, that can come in and immediately help someone out of the backfield. Bo Scarborough is a guy that probably had one of the most disappointing ends to his collegiate career. Remember, after the 2016 season in which he lit up the playoffs, everybody was ready for Bo Scarborough to take over in 2017, and he was outdone by a couple of Alabama backs. He wasn't the guy. He was the guy after the guy after the guy. So the 40-inch vert, that's nice. The 4.52, that's great. But he's been injury prone. He runs very upright, doesn't necessarily run behind his pads. He needs space to start up. He's a build-up runner. Similar to Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry has the ability to make people miss. And I think there's a much better pad level with Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry's much bigger and doesn't come with the durability issues that both Scarborough comes with. Derrick Henry was at around 240 pounds. Bo Scarborough is at 225 pounds. So I don't like the comparison to Derrick Henry. And I got to see more from Bo. But again, another guy in this draft that's very intriguing. And so he's another guy that in the mid to late rounds, you may be able to steal up and see if you can get something out of him. Akrum Wadley out of Iowa. I never was a huge Wadley fan, and he didn't blow me away at this combine. Neither did Mark Walton. I was actually really disappointed in Mark Walton because I thought he would run faster. And, you know, they can try to sell me on the quicker than fast thing, but I totally – he kind of falls in line with some of the disappointments that I've gotten out of these Miami backs over the years. Duke Johnson is the only one that kind of did what I expected him to do at the next level, but a lot of these Miami backs come into the league and they just aren't worth their weight in gold. And I think Mark Walton could be another one of these guys. Now, what I was told, and I can't confirm or deny this because I haven't watched enough of him in past pro situations, but DJ said that he's the best pass protector by far and away in this draft. And if that is true, that's going to get him on the field very quickly at the next level. I know he can catch the football. I thought he was faster than that, but if he's got the quicks and he can pass protect, there's a place on the field for him on third downs for some team in this league. So we'll see what happens. But I thought he was going to be a lot faster than what he was, and he was in that high 4.5, low 4.6 range, and I didn't see that coming from Mark Walton. I thought he was going to be a sub 4.5 guy in the low 4.5s, like 4.51, 4.52, somewhere in there, and he just wasn't. Royce Freeman is a guy that I'm not high on. I know a lot of people love him out of Oregon, 5'11", 229. He's a bigger back, one of those bowling balls, similar to another back that is nearing the end of his career that came out of Oregon in Jonathan Stewart. Similar build to Jonathan Stewart, but Stewart had a little bit of explosion and burst, something that I don't think Royce Freeman has. So I'm not a Royce Freeman guy, and he didn't do anything to change my mind at the combine. Kerryon Johnson decided not to run the 40, which tells me he's not confident in his time, and he's not fast. And I said that I didn't expect him to run fast, so I would have loved to have seen him run, but it doesn't make me any difference. We're going to hear him run at the Auburn Pro Day, And he's going to run a 4.58, 4.59, 4.6 flat, something around there. I still like Kerryon Johnson despite the lack of speed. He caught the ball really well. There's a suddenness and a little bit of a burst to him. I like Kerryon Johnson, and I thought he was solid. Like I said, didn't do anything to move the needle per se, but there's a lot to like with Kerryon Johnson. So that was day one in a nutshell. I said I was going to save the best for last, so let me go ahead and go on my Saquon Barkley gush fest quickly, and then we'll get out of here and get to day two. Saquon Barkley was phenomenal. Like I said, I've never seen a performance quite like this one before. 29 reps of 2 1/4, which was the most of any running back, tied with Nick Chubb, which is ridiculous. At 233 pounds, right around 6 feet, this guy ran a 4.4 flat, had a 41-inch vert, went through the position drills as clean and as effortless as you can possibly perform them. I've never seen a back, I've never seen a player, a skilled position player for that matter, do the things that he did and make them look as easy as he did. There were a couple of catches down the sideline where, and again, he caught the ball better than any receiver I saw catch it today at the receiver position. I mean, that's how good this guy is, not just as a back. Some of the cuts he made during these drills, ridiculous. And no wasted motion with him. Everything's smooth and fluid and easy. The 4.4 was easy. The 41-inch vert, easy. Okay, the 29 reps of 2 1/4, easy. The guy's a walking muscle, and yet he moves so elegantly on the football field. You can't tell me, and I've heard people say this, and I don't understand where they're getting this from, because I've been goo goo gaga over Saquon Barkley for 2 years now, and I've still got people saying that he's not going to have the same impact as Ezekiel Elliott. The only way he's not allowed to impact the game the way Ezekiel Elliott has impacted the game for the Cowboys is if his line in front of him isn't any good. Because Ezekiel Elliott, keep in mind, has the best offensive line in front of him. Okay, so it's a lot easier for him. There are times where Ezekiel Elliott doesn't get touched for 7, 8 yards down the field. Okay, I don't know if Saquon Barkley's going to go to a place like that, because really I think there's no way, if the Browns don't take him 1 overall, and it's crazy that we're talking back at 1, but this guy's a special breed. I think a generational talent. And there's no way in my mind he gets past the Giants. The Giants are drooling all over this guy. I mean, literally. You got to go get the Giants a drool cup, because they are drooling. After he finished all of his on-the-field workouts, there was a Giant scout waiting for him at the back line down in the end zone, and they were just chumming it up. And I know Dave Gettleman, and Dave Gettleman's philosophy has always been, we build from the inside out. We want to build the offense. And the Giants, if they lose Pugh and Weston Richburg in free agency, their offensive line is going to be decimated. An offensive line that, keep in mind, isn't that good to begin with. And 2 of the better players are up for free agency along that offensive line. And if they don't re-sign any of them, their offensive line is going to be in shambles. And if you get a guy like Barkley behind an offensive line that needs work, and maybe you get a guy in free agency, okay? Maybe you go out and you spend money in free agency and then you end up drafting a couple of guys and you fortify the offensive line. But I'll tell you this much. I don't see this guy getting past the Giants. And so that's the only way he's not able to impact the game the way that Fournette did last year, or the way that Ezekiel Elliott did in his rookie campaign. And even still, this is the great equalizer. He can catch the football. So even if you can't get it to him out of the backfield the way you want, you can split this guy out wide. You can run back. You can run routes out of the backfield. He's going to win up the sideline on wheel routes. He's going to beat guys on Texas routes or arrow routes over the middle of the field. He's going to win man-to-man every single time. He's got receiver hands. He's dynamic. He can make you miss out in space. The guy is ridiculous. And he showed every bit of why he's being considered the first overall pick at the Combine in day number 1. Walked away, blown away by Saquon Barkley. But again, it's what I expected, And that's the part that probably has me the most floored, is I expected it. And when I got it, I still wasn't ready for what I was expecting when I got it, which is crazy. But in any event, that's day one of the Scouting Combine. Stay tuned. We'll stream this thing right back up, and we'll jump into day number 2, quarterbacks, receivers, tight ends of the NFL Scouting Combine. I'm your man, Louie T, and remember, we changing the game over here, period. Stay tuned for day number 2 of the Scouting Combine here on the Louie T Network. I'll see you in a bit.